to Weather Radio, broadcasting to the Rio Grande Valley from your National Weather Service in Brownsville. Here's a look at the latest available marine conditions at 1 o'clock p.m. 35 miles northeast of Port Mansfield, south wind at 14 knots, gusting to 17. Significant waves 6 feet, with a period of 7 seconds, air temperature 72 degrees. 200 miles east of Port Isabel, southeast wind at 14 knots, gusting to 17. Air temperature 74 degrees, Gulf water temperature 76 degrees. Wave heights 4 feet, with a period of 6 seconds. Predicted temps for the South Padre Island jetties. Today, a low at 12:22 a.m. A high at 8:50 a.m. Saturday, a low at 1:06 a.m. A high at 10:31 a.m. Water temperatures in the bay near Port Isabel, 72 degrees. In the surf at South Padre Island, 72 degrees. Sunrise at 7:37 a.m. Sunset at 7:40 p.m. Here's a look at your 1:00 p.m. weather conditions. At the International Airport in Brownsville, under partly sunny skies, the temperature was 81 degrees, dew point 66, making relative humidity 60%. Winds were from the south at 26 miles an hour, gusting to 33 miles an hour. The pressure was 30.17 and falling. And at the Valley International Airport in Harlingen, under mostly sunny skies, the temperature was 83 degrees, dew point 65, making the relative humidity 54%. Winds were from the south at 25 miles an hour, gusting to 33 miles an hour. The pressure was 30.14 and falling. Weather conditions across the region at 1 o'clock p.m. in Harlingen, mostly sunny, temperature 83 degrees. South wind at 25, gusting to 33 miles an hour. Bayview, mostly sunny, temperature 82 degrees. South wind at 23, gusting to 33 miles an hour. Brownsville, partly sunny, temperature 81 degrees. South wind at 26, gusting to 33 miles an hour. Weslaco, partly sunny, temperature 82 degrees. South wind at 18, gusting to 33 miles an hour. Edinburgh, mostly sunny, temperature 85 degrees. South wind at 20, gusting to 25 miles an hour. McAllen, mostly sunny, temperature 85 degrees. Southeast wind at 22, gusting to 33 miles an hour. Hebronville, mostly sunny, temperature 78 degrees. South wind at 17, gusting to 24 miles an hour. Elsewhere across Texas at this hour, Laredo, sunny, 81 degrees. Del Rio, cloudy, 70 degrees. El Paso, mostly sunny, 76 degrees. Amarillo, sunny, 72 degrees. At DFW Airport, partly sunny, 78 degrees. Houston, partly sunny, 78 degrees. Austin, cloudy, 75 degrees. San Antonio, partly sunny, 74 degrees. And in Corpus Christi, partly sunny, 78 degrees. Here's your National Weather Service forecast for Brownsville, Harlingen, and surrounding areas. Today, partly cloudy, breezy. Highs in the lower to mid-80s. South winds 10 to 20 miles an hour, becoming southeast 15 to 25 miles an hour. Tonight, mostly clear. Low 66 to 71. Southeast winds 10 to 15 miles an hour. Saturday, partly cloudy in the morning, then becoming sunny. Highs in the lower to mid-80s. Southeast winds 10 to 15 miles an hour, becoming 15 to 20 miles an hour in the afternoon. Saturday night, partly cloudy. Low 65 to 70. Sunday, partly cloudy in the morning and clearing. Highs in the mid to upper 80s. Looking ahead at your extended weather forecast, Sunday night and Monday, mostly clear. Lows in the 60s. Highs in the 80s. Monday night and Tuesday, mostly clear. Lows in the 60s. Highs in the 80s. Tuesday night and Wednesday. partly cloudy. Lows in the 60s. Highs in the 80s. Wednesday night and Thursday, partly cloudy. Lows 65 to 75. Highs in the 80s. The hazardous weather outlook for portions of deep South Texas. For today and tonight, there is a moderate risk of rip currents at the beaches of South Padre Island and Boca Chica Beach. The extended outlook for the period Saturday through Thursday, no hazardous weather is expected at this time. Spotter information statement. Spotter activation will not be needed. The hazardous weather outlook for portions of the Gulf of Mexico and the Laguna Madre. For today and tonight, a small craft advisory remains in effect for the Gulf waters beyond 20 nautical miles until 1 p.m. A small craft advisory is in effect for the Laguna Madre from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. for hazardous winds. The extended outlook for the period Saturday through Thursday, hazardous winds and seas may develop across all portions of the lower Texas coastal waters on Thursday. Spotter information statement. Spotter activation will not be needed. Small craft advisory for winds remains in effect until 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time this evening. Winds southeast at 20 to 25 knots. A small craft advisory for wind means that wind speeds of 20 to 33 knots are expected. Inexperienced mariners, especially those operating smaller vessels, should avoid navigating in these conditions. Here is the marine forecast for the following marine location, the coastal waters. Synopsis. The surface pressure gradient increased overnight due to high pressure near the coastal bend of Florida interacting with low pressure developing across the southern plains. Hazardous winds and seas will continue over the far offshore Gulf waters through midday before subsiding somewhat as the marine layer stabilizes. Meanwhile, winds over the Laguna Madre will increase through the day and a small craft advisory is in effect through early this evening. Winds will stay elevated until the low dissipates Saturday morning and high pressure expands westward into the central Gulf. This will keep improved marine conditions through the weekend and into early next week. Here is the marine forecast for the following marine locations: Laguna Madre from the port of Brownsville to the Arroyo, Colorado. Laguna Madre from the Arroyo, Colorado to 5 nautical miles north of Port Mansfield, Texas, and Laguna Madre from 5 nautical miles north of Port Mansfield to Baton Bay, Texas. Small craft advisory for winds in effect until 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time this evening. Rest of today, south winds 12 to 15 knots becoming southeast 20 to 25 knots in the late morning and afternoon. A moderate chop on the bay increasing to rough in the late morning and afternoon. Tonight, southeast winds 10 to 15 knots becoming south 7 to 12 knots after midnight. A moderate chop on the bay subsiding to a light chop after midnight. Saturday, southeast winds 8 to 13 knots increasing to 12 to 15 knots in the afternoon. A moderate chop on the bay. Saturday night, southeast winds 8 to 13 knots diminishing to 7 to 10 knots after midnight. A moderate chop on the bay subsiding to a light chop after midnight. Sunday, southeast winds 7 to 11 knots increasing to 10 to 14 knots in the afternoon. A light chop on the bay increasing to a moderate chop in the afternoon. Sunday night, southeast winds 9 to 14 knots diminishing to 7 to 11 knots after midnight. A moderate chop on the bay subsiding to a light chop after midnight. Monday, southeast winds 9 to 14 knots. A moderate chop on the bay. Monday night, southeast winds 9 to 14 knots. A moderate chop on the bay. Tuesday, southeast winds 9 to 14 knots. A moderate chop on the bay. Tuesday night, southeast winds 9 to 14 knots. A moderate chop on the bay. Here is the marine forecast for the following marine locations: waters from Port Mansfield, Texas to Rio Grande extending from 20 nautical miles to 60 nautical miles, and waters from Baton Bay to Port Mansfield extending from 20 to 60 nautical miles. Small craft advisory in effect until 1 p.m. Central Daylight Time this afternoon. Rest of today, southeast winds 14 to 18 knots. Seas 5 to 7 feet with occasional seas up to 10 feet. Tonight, southeast winds 12 to 17 knots diminishing to 11 to 14 knots early in the morning. Seas 4 to 6 feet with occasional seas up to 8 feet. Saturday, southeast winds 10 to 15 knots. Seas 3 to 5 feet with occasional seas up to 6 feet. Saturday night, southeast winds 9 to 13 knots. Seas 2 to 4 feet with occasional seas up to 6 feet. Sunday, southeast winds 8 to 12 knots. Seas 2 to 4 feet with occasional seas up to 6 feet. Sunday night, southeast winds 10 to 14 knots. Seas 1 to 3 feet. Monday, southeast winds 10 to 13 knots. Seas 1 to 3 feet. Monday night, southeast winds 11 to 14 knots. Seas 2 to 4 feet with occasional seas up to 5 feet. Tuesday, southeast winds 11 to 14 knots. Seas 2 to 4 feet with occasional seas up to 5 feet. Tuesday night, southeast winds 12 to 15 knots. Seas 2 to 4 feet with occasional seas up to 5 feet. Here is the marine forecast for the following marine locations: coastal waters from Port Mansfield, Texas to Rio Grande out 20 nautical miles, and coastal waters from Baton Bay to Port Mansfield, Texas out 20 nautical miles. Small craft should exercise caution. Rest of today, southeast winds 13 to 18 knots. Seas 4 to 6 feet with occasional seas up to 8 feet. Tonight, southeast winds 10 to 15 knots. Seas 3 to 5 feet with occasional seas up to 6 feet. Saturday, southeast winds 9 to 14 knots. Seas 3 to 5 feet with occasional seas up to 6 feet. Saturday night, southeast winds 7 to 12 knots. Seas 2 to 4 feet with occasional seas up to 5 feet. Sunday, southeast winds 8 to 13 knots. Seas 2 to 4 feet with occasional seas up to 5 feet. Sunday night, southeast winds 8 to 13 knots. Seas 2 to 3 feet. Monday, southeast winds 10 to 13 knots. Seas 2 to 3 feet. Monday night, southeast winds 10 to 13 knots. Seas 2 to 3 feet. Tuesday, southeast winds 10 to 13 knots. Seas 2 to 3 feet. Tuesday night, southeast winds 10 to 13 knots. Seas 2 to 4 feet with occasional seas up to 5 feet. Moderate rip current risk in effect through Saturday morning. The National Weather Service in Brownsville has issued a moderate rip current risk, which is in effect through Saturday morning. Timing, now through early Saturday morning. Impacts, marine conditions support the possibility of stronger or more frequent life-threatening rip currents, which will create dangerous swimming conditions at Boca Chica Beach and the beaches of South Padre Island, especially near the jetties. Mostly sunny skies today with air temperatures in the mid-70s and surf temperatures around the 72 degrees are likely to draw many people into the water. There is also a moderate risk of longshore currents today, which can push swimmers well down the beach from the point where they enter the water. Therefore, swimming is discouraged, as it will be potentially dangerous for all swimmers. There is a moderate risk of rip currents. Rip currents are powerful channels of water flowing quickly away from shore, which occur most often at low spots or breaks in the sandbar and in the vicinity of structures such as crewings, jetties, and piers. Heed the advice of lifeguards, beach patrol flags, and signs. If you become caught in a rip current, yell for help. Remain calm, do not exhaust yourself, and stay afloat while waiting for help. If you have to swim out of a rip current, swim parallel to shore and back toward the beach when possible. Do not attempt to swim directly against the rip current as you will tire quickly. Thank you for listening to Weather Radio, broadcasting to the Rio Grande.
That was a channel cycle of WWG34 on TV. Thanks for watching. It's over now, and that's all.